By the end of this year, there will be over 1.5 million new cancer cases diagnosed in this country. What you may not know is that about 10% of these are actually hereditary. When I say hereditary, it's not the actual cancer that's being passed down through families, but rather an abnormal or faulty gene that people are born with that puts them at an increased risk. If a patient is found to have one of these faulty genes through a genetic test, then there's certain information we know is important to tell them. One piece of information is about their children, specifically that each of their children is now at a 50-50 risk of also inheriting that faulty cancer gene. This is a pretty standard conversation we have in the field of cancer genetics, but as with most things, it gets a little bit more complicated than that. See, we've discovered that for certain cancer genes, there are risks for completely different conditions that can occur under a unique set of circumstances. So take the BRCA2 gene as an example. This is a gene we know is associated with hereditary breast cancer that runs through families. But if both members of a couple, mother and father, both have a faulty BRCA2 gene, each of their children is also at risk for a 25% risk for a condition called Fanconi anemia. And Fanconi anemia is a severe disorder of blood and bone marrow. These kids have a number of devastating symptoms that they go through, but most importantly, they have a really high risk of developing childhood leukemia. And Fanconi anemia is not the only story here. There are other conditions associated with different cancer genes that, again, occur under that special circumstance of both parents having the same faulty cancer gene. So what I found interesting was a study that was done last year. It surveyed genetic counselors, and it found that there's a discrepancy in whether genetic counselors are discussing these special risks with patients or not. It really highlighted the inconsistency of information that patients are receiving, specifically adult patients undergoing cancer genetic testing. So my research and project aims to expand upon this particular study. So I'm going to be surveying cancer and medical genetics professionals regarding their thoughts on this issue. Specifically, I want to know, who do they believe has a responsibility to tell patients about these specific risks? Do they think it's certain providers, maybe the testing labs? How and when do they believe is the best way to do so? These are some of the questions that I'm hoping to answer, but ultimately I want to demonstrate that there's a need for more professional guidelines on this very specific reproductive risk topic in cancer genetics. Right now, there's really no professional guidelines that exist out there, and so it's left up to the individual medical professional to make those decisions of discussing it. And honestly, I just believe that we owe our patients more consistency than that. Thank you.